Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Oh, maybe I won't do that. That was a close thing, wasn't it? I didn't think it was going to start then. Why are you pinging at me? Oh, seatbelt, crying out loud. Well, hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and I've come out to give you this little piece in the Crown Victoria because I haven't driven this car in a long time, obviously because lack of floor, and it turns out it's really, really cold, so I'll put the heater on, and of course you can hear that lovely V8 thrumming away for a minute or two here at the beginning of the video, so I hope you enjoy that little added oral satisfaction to this thing. Anyway, what's this video all about? Well, it's about classics and, well, future classics, because if there's one thing I get asked, well, I'd say more than anything, but certainly an awful lot. Okay, not that. When is insert any of the cars going to be finished is the thing I get asked more than anything. What's happening with such and such a car? Perhaps the second most popular follow-up to that is what's going to be a future classic? What is the car that's cheap now that is the classic of tomorrow? What can I buy now? Not necessarily as an investment, but certainly something that's going to be welcomed at a car show in 10 years' time. And that's a really hard question to answer, but there's a few things that make certain cars stand out, whether it's an interesting design that makes them stand out from the crowd, or just the sheer power of nostalgia because so many people had them as either a first car, the car they learned to drive in, their mum and dad had one, that kind of thing. So I've had a little look and I've got a list of 10 cars which I think are fairly safe buys if you're looking for a car to buy that's, well, maybe an investment of some kind, or at the very least something that's interesting to tool around in and be sort of recognised as a classic in the next few years. Here you are. There is, of course, a small disclaimer here. Values of cars in this list are not guaranteed to increase, and they may well go down as well. Cars may get banned entirely off the road, so this is a silly idea putting money into cars. This is not a rock-solid, ocean-going, gold-plated guarantee that these cars will increase in value. I'm just somebody here off the internet. Take my advice with a pinch of salt at best. Yes, because don't take my word for it. If you put money on this and the car does not turn out to be valuable in 5 years' time, don't come blaming me. I can't really guess the markets, only my opinion. Anyway, I'll start off with a couple of things which are going to upset a few people, but these are not classics I think you should buy now because they're going to be classics, but I think they are cool but not an investment. If you buy one now, yeah, certainly you'll be welcome at classic car shows, but you're going to be losing money in the long run. First of all, but the E46 BMW, because I think it's a good car. It's a great car to drive. It's well engineered. It's one of the last good BMWs, if you like, before things got too complicated and frankly ugly. But there are a lot of them, and they seem to have sidestepped nostalgia somehow. Maybe I'm just missing the point with them, and maybe they are. Maybe there's a strong growing thing out there. Maybe in the next episode of this I will have changed my mind. I don't know, but at the moment I'm not going to say E46 is a strong buy for a future classic. It's a strong buy for a good second-hand car. Definitely one of those. However, not necessarily a thing you want to be going out and buying as an investment. Secondly, a Vauxhall Tigra, which I think is a fascinating and pretty little car, but like a lot of Vauxhalls, seems to have been forgotten by nostalgia, and you can pick them up for nothing, and I think they'll continue to be worth nothing for quite a long time. But I think they're pretty cool cars with the folding hardtop and everything. They're a good fun summer car. Thirdly, and I'm surprising myself by saying this, Mark III Mondeo. Now you'd think any Ford is a guaranteed, rock-solid, gold-plated, ocean-going, guaranteed future classic, but somehow the Mark III Mondeo, I don't know, I've owned one and I think it was a brilliant car. But there are a few technical issues that get quite expensive quite fast with those cars, and they kind of make them a bit of a risky minefield to own. They're a great car, but again, like the E46, maybe I'm just looking at this from too soon. But I'm not sure they're going to hit really big values particularly. Maybe because there are so many of them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely off the beam with this one. But Mark I and Mark II Mondeos I thought were going up in value quite a lot, but they seem to have peaked at under £2,000 and don't seem to be going anywhere. So maybe the Mark III I think is going to follow. And finally, as for the cool but not an investment category, this is a car I would love to own, but I'm not sure I'm brave enough. A Citroën C6. Stunning, beautiful, avant-garde, out there French design. Amazing wafty ride, a beautiful interior, great technology for the day, and not as madly unreliable as you might think. But the thing that really kills it for me is the cost of the tax, the road tax and those things, just horrific. So yeah, I think it's a great car to buy, but you've got to go with your eyes open, and I don't think there's enough of a following behind them to make them into an expensive potential future classic worth lots of money. So yeah, okay, those are the ones cool, but don't buy it if you want to get your money back. Second, before we start the list, short list, two that are cool, but you already missed the boat. And they're both little convertibles coming up to summertime, perfect time for a Daihatsu Copen, which is such a cool little K sports car, like an MX-5 that got shrunk in the wash. Great fun, great engineering, pretty design, lots of people love them. And unfortunately that means they've already got expensive, that you've already missed the boat if you're after a cheap Copen, they've already gone up. And likewise the BMW Z3, because for so long you could buy a Z3 for absolutely buttons that were worth next to nothing. Couldn't give them away. Well, people didn't like them. The design of them was frankly unpopular. But now suddenly the retro look is cool. People are recognising the fact it's a rear-wheel drive, small, compact, cheap to run, cheap to maintain, great driving convertible. And guess what? They're worth money. And it's too late. You've missed the boat if you're after a cheap Z3 unless you find a fixer-upper. Right, that is the would have beens, could have beens. Now let's go into the list of actual future classics, and I've got a top 10 for you. And this is not by any means a definitive top 10, and next month I'll probably do another top 10 with 10 more that you should probably try and buy. But first of all, let's start with number 1, the Audi A2. This is one of those cars, as in, when did you last see an Audi A2 for one thing? But they are a great little car. They're built from 1999 to 2005, all aluminium. They're built in a purpose-built production line in Germany, and there are some special 3-cylinder diesels which should do like an average of 80 to 90 mpg. They're amazing. The brief for them was to design a small Audi, not a cheap Audi, so it feels premium and it looks premium. The thing I love about it, it was a landmark of clever design, pushing the boundaries of, well, product packaging, manufacturing techniques, and of course lightness. The thing was designed to be incredibly light and efficient, which is where we should be going with cars today. Now good ones are already around £5,000, so this is on the cusp of missing the boat at this point. However, you can still find them for under £1,000 if you don't mind doing a bit of project work. However, do be aware finding parts can be tricky and expensive, but it's definitely one that's on the rise, definitely one to go and look at quite seriously if you're after something a little bit different. Now next up, this is a bit more mainstream, but surprisingly difficult to buy a good one of. The Ford Ka, or Ka, depending on how you want to say it. 1998 to 2004, pre-main facelift. This is new age design, so already the styling was pretty out there, but it was actually based on a gear concept from the early 90s called the, how do you pronounce this, Sietta. It was a show car from a few years previously, and although it looked really extraordinary, it was actually built around the Mark III Fiesta platform, so very ordinary under the skin, even though it looked pretty out there on the outside. Now the thing is, it might just be a Mark III Fiesta, but Richard Parry-Jones and his team breathed on it, and that made it incredibly good to drive. So tiny car, cheap to run, but rewarding behind the wheel, which is a fantastic combination. Now, the early years are the purest of the design, the keep it cheap, keep it interesting. In the first 3 years, only got the black plastic bumper. There's also the old Ford Kent engine for the first couple of years of production as well. So you need to go till I think 2002 for the Endura, the 998cc instead of the 1.3. More modern, bit smoother, but slightly less powerful. It was a clever design, great engineering, great handling, and loads of nostalgia, because loads of people had them as first cars, lots of old people had them as last cars. There were driving schools using them, which is always a good thing for nostalgia, and nostalgia drives prices. And you can pay £2,000 or £3,000 for a nice one. However, there are lots of fixer-uppers for under £1,000. Looking on eBay today, there's one for 350 quid, there's £600. However, you do need to be very aware that these things rot, and they rot badly from the inside out, so go in looking very carefully. I think I'm about to run out of petrol, so I'm going to turn this engine off. I love the sound of that V8, but we are right on the last fumes in this petrol tank. Right, number 3 on this list, another Ford. And as a Ford we reviewed on the channel just a couple of weeks ago, the Mark I Focus. This is definitely a future classic. Ford family cars are always a fairly rock solid investment because Ford tax eventually kicks in and the value just goes silly for no reason. However, the Mark I Focus, 1998 to 2004, another Richard Parry-Jones new age classic. So it's Ford at the top of their game. It does everything absolutely right. It's great design that pushes new ideas, and that will always be a future classic, plus the nostalgia, because again, like the Ka, lots of parents had them, lots of families had them, driving schools had them, so loads of people who 20 years ago were sort of 17, 18 and now in their 30s or 40s, they've got the money to buy these things they want to go and wish they had before, and that's pushing the prices up. Find a nice low mile one with about £2,500 for a really tidy example and you are laughing. There are some for more than that already, but you can find lots that are less than perfect for a lot less than that. And this is again, like the Ka, is the danger. There's lots of ropey ones. They made thousands of them, tens, hundreds of thousands. So go in with your eyes open, be prepared to walk away, find the right one, and you're onto a winner with the Mark I Focus. Garnering a little bit of controversy here. This may well be an unpopular decision with some, but I think this is definitely a future classic because it's so different and so iconic. The Fiat Multipla, the pre-facelift from 1998 to 2004 when it was properly pig ugly, gawky looking weird thing. However, it's bold design. Bold design makes memories. People think of it and see it, and you say Multipla to everybody and they remember it. And that is something that counts, because look at some of the older classics from like the 50s and the 40s and wherever. If you say the name of a car that no one remembers, that car is worth nothing in most cases. Say the name of a car that people do remember, say the Austin 7, that's not an ugly weird one, that's just a really popular car, and the values of that are right up. So I think the Multipla, because of its weirdness, there are so many MPVs which have absolutely vanished and disappeared into obscurity. The Honda Odyssey we did a review of a few weeks ago, very popular in Australia and America. It was relatively popular over here, but not a huge seller. However, virtually forgotten, like none left. And people were commenting in that video, I don't remember seeing one, I'd forgotten they existed, that kind of thing. No one ever says that about the Multipla. It might not be worth a fortune ever, but it'll always draw a crowd, and that's a rock solid guarantee the crowd will come. Interestingly, it's shorter but wider than the Brava/Bravo platform it was built on, so it's seated 6, 2 rows of 3 seats front and back, so lots of space. Again, really clever packaging, and that's always something I think is interesting. But if there's something interesting to latch onto, people will remember that car. It's very hard to put a price on a Mark 1 at the moment, largely because I couldn't find any for sale. I found 4 or 5 of the facelift ones going for £2,000 or £3,000, 1,500 quid or so. I'm going to say £1,000 to £2,000 for a good runner, but finding a good one is surprisingly very hard now. I was actually shocked I couldn't find any for sale to get a price for it, so good luck with that one. Now, you're not going to be surprised at this entry in the list because, well, it's number 5, but it was always going to make the list. The Rover 75, 1998 to 2005, the last real Rover, you might want to say, and actually one of the best. Richard Woolley's superb retro design will never go out of fashion because it was never truly in fashion. It's always skirted around the edge. It's a little bit wooden to drive compared to some of its rivals, like the Mondeo and the Alfa 156 certainly drive better, but it looks fabulous and the interior is amazing. Real wood in the early cars. The seats were amazingly comfortable all the way through, and it certainly does actually drive better than some other cars in its class. So it's a really good car in so many ways. It's beautifully engineered. Prices have been very low, but they are climbing quite rapidly, partly because people who don't remember why they should dislike Rover are over that kind of stigma, and so they're just recognising a really cool, interesting, different car. Again, it's different, it doesn't blend in with the crowd, and the price is reflecting that. And generally people are just starting to recognise it as an interesting car in its own right. You can still buy a car for under £1,000. There are still some absolute rotters out there for very little money indeed, but we're getting to the point now, 20 years on, where the bad ones are falling away and the good ones are the ones that are remaining. And good, really nice, tidy examples are regularly moving for £4,000 to £5,000 with dealers already, and that's only going to keep on going upwards at the moment. But yeah, find a good one for about £2,000, but yeah, you can easily spend double that. And next up, a car I haven't driven actually yet, but I've driven the Mark II, the Mark I Volvo V70, 1996 through to 2000. And the 850 that it's based on has already started doing the upward value trend of a classic car. And it's already gone retro cool. So with its also retro cool classic Volvo boxiness, the original most boxy V70 I think is going to be following that trend fairly soon indeed. The anti-cool gang have already latched into the 200, the 700, the 900, and the prices of all those have risen dramatically in the last few years. And as those are going to get slightly unaffordable for everyday use, the first V70 is going to be there waiting to step into the fold. Of course, being slightly new, you get a few more sort of 1990s safety features like ABS and airbags and that kind of stuff, so good stuff all round really. A nice V70, the really hot one, could already be costing you £5,000 to £6,000, maybe a bit more. But a cooking model in decent condition, currently about 1,500 quid, and I think they're all going to creep up the way that Volvos do. It's not rapid rise, but they do creep up and they do kind of hold their value, so safe buy there. The Mark II is also a good one to follow as well. Now, next up, we've got the Smart 42. Didn't see that one coming, did you? The 450 series, which ran from 1998 until 2002. Originally, it only came with a 599cc engine. It's rear-engined, it's a 3-cylinder turbo, and it's got the weird, frankly dreadful, automated manual gearbox. It's a really quirky, interesting, different design. There was nothing else like it at the time, and there's not really been much since that counts as an actual car. Again, really clever engineering coming to the fore and making things stand out. The Tritium safety cell, which is definitely a made-up word, makes it a nice, safe little car, even though it's absolutely tiny, and it's got the clip-off swappable plastic panels, so you can change the colour of the car by changing the outside cladding, which is a clever idea, which no one did, but great idea. Now they're fondly remembered. They're kind of fun to drive. There's loads of different models to drive from a really basic two-door, just basic two-door, through to the convertibles and the cross blades and all kinds of other things. So there's a strong following for them, which is really, really powerful in terms of driving prices up. So good club, good following, lots of fans, lots of models, all ticking all the boxes there for a future classic. A bit like a 2CV really. Look around and you'll find a tidy one for under £2,000, but you can already spend more than that quite happily for an early one. Yeah, hang on to that one. That's definitely one to tuck away. And also it's conveniently small, so you can buy 2 or 3 of them. In fact, the length of this car that I'm sitting in right now, you could probably fit 3 Smart 4.2s in the same place. Now this one, another one you might be a bit surprised at. Now bear with me, the Mark 1 BMW 1 Series. It's not BMW's first compact. I mean, don't forget there was the one actually called the Compact immediately before it. Now the hatchback is the one you're probably thinking of, and that's the one you saw most of really 3 and 5 door, the E81 I think that was. But unlike so many of its small car rivals, it was rear wheel drive, longitudinal engine, 50-50 weight distribution, and of course multi-link suspension, so great handling, a really, really good driving car. It even looks a lot like the Rover R30 that never was, but I'm going to focus on the E82 Coupe, the tiny, tiny 2-door saloon. In its size category, there was nothing else like it in terms of handling and looks. It was just so, so cool. And you can get it with a 6-cylinder engine as well, which is fabulous, chef's kiss and all that. And you could even get an M version, the 1M, which is a cracking thing, amazing thing. And we're not going to talk about that because that's already achieved cult status and is worth a ton of money, but we're talking the basic 120, 118, and there were M versions of those which were just like the body kit and stuff, which look good and they handle well. So it's largely E90 under the skin, so reliable, decent car. Chris Bangle did the flame edge design. It's bold and it's different, and I think we're going to start seeing them at classic car shows within the next 5 to 10 years, quite definitely, because there aren't that many around. There's a lot of the hatchbacks, not many of the little coupe saloon things. So yeah, under £3,000 buys you a reasonable one at the moment. So hunt around and you might find a good one. I would definitely say get one of the 6 cylinders because those are just creamy smooth and lovely. Now next up we've got the new Volkswagen Beetle from, well, the early noughties. Like the Rover 75 and of course the Mini, it played strongly on retro nostalgia, but instead of being a standalone car like the Mini or the Rover 75, it was basically a less practical but cooler Volkswagen Golf. And so Golf engines, Golf parts, Golf suspension, lots of Golf things, which make it cheap and easy to run and repair, but looks really interesting and cool. It's very much a love or hate thing, and my Beetle project videos a year or so ago, they kind of got 50-50 split in the comments of outright abuse and outright joy and love, so an interesting one to try and quantify. However, a lot of people do love them and that counts for a lot. I never really kind of got a handle on whether classic Beetle people loved them or hated them. I think again it was a split, but like with classic Mini people. It's different and it's interesting. It stands out in the crowd of boring, bland, jelly mold SUVs and dull cars in any car park. You can always find it, and it's a car that just makes you smile. In terms of classic status, that's often all it takes. Just a car that makes you happy to be in and look at. So yeah, find a brightly coloured one. Make sure you've got the flower vase on the dashboard. You can buy a project from 500 quid, £1,000 to £2,000 for a tidy runner, 3 grand for a nice, tidy, really good one at the moment. But it's only going to go up. And they also respond really well to a bit of modifying. Lower it, stick some decent wheels on it, polish it up nicely, you've got a cracking looking car in your hands. I regret selling mine with a PD engine in it. You can get PD engine in it as well. God, that's another great selling point. Right, now number 10 on our list, the last one for today. Maybe we'll come back and do a few more next month because there are so many I was wanted to include but didn't have time for on this list. This is one I've actually bought myself. It's not often I buy a car as an investment because I tend to buy cars with my heart rather than my head, but this is one I've done with both. The R50 Mini, the original new BMW Mini, because replacing the old Mini was never going to be an easy task, and the abuse the R50 got when it was new was horrendous. Looking back, it now seems like a tiny breath of fresh air compared with the modern cars. Now it's another great one from the dying embers of the Rover group. Rover design brilliance, backed by BMW money, made a really, really good car. Frank Stevenson, the designer, started by imagining how a Mini should look in every generation because it should have been updated every decade or so with lots of iterations and evolutions going through the years. There should have been like a hatchback version by the end of the 1970s and it should have kept on evolving, but it didn't. So his first task was to imagine how it would have evolved, and so he's kept the original Mini DNA in the design, and the original R50 is true to the original ideas of lots of internal space, small packaging, great driving, and it does all of those really, really well, and it feels the most like a Mini of any of the new BMW era Minis, and they've felt less and less like an actual Mini with every passing generation. They sold a ton of them, so there are millions out there. Lots of them were first cars, learners cars, of course family cars, and of course people had them as company cars. So a lot of young people getting into their first job might have got a Mini as their first company car. So a ton of nostalgia, and of course it's iconic, it's a Mini, so you're always going to have that love for the brand, making it a really, really strong, safe choice. There's lots around, so buy carefully. There are loads of rough cars for under £1,000. A nice early noughties one, an R50, £2,000 to £3,000 for a really tidy one. However, the ones to really look for if you want to get really serious about investing in a future one is find a Y plate, one of the wire edge cars, because they were the pilot build cars that were internally used. This is what I've gone and bought, and I paid £500 for mine, and it's insured for £5,000 now. So that is the one to go for. However, they're hard to find. However, the Y ones are a little bit special, and there are a few little different pieces, so you wouldn't necessarily want that for an everyday driver. If you're looking for a cheap but going to increase in value everyday driver, grab yourself a 2001 to 2004-ish, maybe even an S from 2003 onwards, with a supercharger on it. It's a great daily driver. The engine in that series is reliable. The electrics can be a bit squiffy, that's the only real problem, but they're good fun to drive, they're practical, they're brilliant, and they're going to go up in value. That's one of the few cars I will guarantee are going to increase in value. So, have I hit the nail on the head? Have I got it completely wrong? Am I barking up a tree that should not be barked up? Let me know in the comments. What do you think? What have I missed off? Well, I need to include some in the next list, so tell me what you think is going to be a future classic that's still in the doldrums of value at the moment, but give it 5 years, it's going to be a goldmine. Because let's face it, there are so many cars we wish we'd kept, and we look back now in the classifieds and see we can't even afford them anymore. Maybe these are the ones we shouldn't be selling at the moment. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and see you again next time.